To innovate, you have to create protected space. To innovate, you have to carve out margin. To innovate, you have to block out time on your calendar. In short, you have to create innovation capacity.
Welcome to the Propel Podcast, inspiration and innovation to grow your church. I'm your host, Larry Witzel. Adventist churches grow differently, and our goal with this podcast is to offer practical training for effective evangelism in the Seventh-day Adventist ministry context. As season 4 of the podcast continues, I'm excited to hear more powerful strategies from digital evangelism to church revitalization. But I got to tell you, there's nothing like the live Propel conference experience. So I invite you to join us live in Gladstone, Oregon next year, April 25 to 28, 2027. It's going to be 4 days of inspiration and innovation to grow your church and reach your community. And I'm looking forward to seeing you there. If you're wondering why we release the Propel podcast episodes every 2 weeks, it's because we want to give you space to reflect. The Propel Conference delivers 30 talks in just 4 days. It's a fire hose of insight. So on the podcast, we take all that content and we spread it out. We pace it across the entire year. So every 2 weeks, you're getting a new speaker, an idea, space to reflect and process and apply it to your ministry. So that's why we spread it out over the entire year. Today's episode has another one of those strange introductions because the speaker is yours truly, Larry Witzel. I'm the director of the Propel Conference and also president of Sermon View. About a year ago, I graduated from Liberty University with a PhD in strategic media, focusing my dissertation on parasocial relationships in the context of digital evangelism. My passion lies at the intersection of technology and marketing and ministry. At Sermon View, we're in our 21st year helping churches with digital evangelism and community connection. We've managed almost 8,000 marketing campaigns for over 2,500 churches across North America. Now, in this presentation, I uncovered the secrets to fostering innovation in ministry with a focus on disciplined subtraction and strategic focus. This session emphasizes the importance of creating space for creativity by eliminating non-essential commitments. The good is the enemy of the best. So in this presentation, you're going to learn how to build a sustainable culture of innovation that empowers church leaders to adapt and thrive. By prioritizing clarity and collaboration, leaders can enhance their ministry's impact and effectiveness. This approach is essential for those looking to drive meaningful change and growth within their communities. And we'll hear the full presentation in just a minute. Before we get to that, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of this episode, Forecasting Hope. Created by international evangelist and speaker David Kleindienst, Forecasting Hope presents Bible prophecy from a Christ-centered, positive, and relational perspective. The series is turnkey, but it's also completely editable, so you can preach it as is, or you can make it your own to fit the demographics of your unique audience, or tailor it to fit your own ministry context. It's all yours. It's not just about reaching the head, it's also about reaching the heart. An evangelistic series is more than just presenting facts and figures and doctrinal information. It's about introducing people to Jesus and his truths, and this is a tool that can help you do this really effectively. You can find out more about Forecasting Hope, including where to purchase the kit, sample videos, and testimonials by visiting evangelismmarketing.com/forecastinghope. That's evangelismmarketing.com/forecastinghope. All right, let's get to today's presentation. Here is my Monday morning main session presentation from the 2026 Propel Conference, Leading Change That Lasts, the Innovation Capacity Framework.
I want to start by sharing Ellen White's secret recipe for church growth. If you follow this recipe, your church will grow. Your members will be activated for ministry. Your baptistry will be used way more often than it currently is. Your church will become a beacon of light in your community. Would you like to hear this recipe? Men are needed who pray to God for wisdom and who, under the guidance of God, can put new life into the old methods of labor and can invent new plans and new methods of awakening the interest of church members and reaching the men and women of the world. Let me give you some context. This comes from manuscript 117. It was written to denominational leaders in 1907. It was at the end, a synthesis of 6 decades of ministry, of Ellen White watching the ups and downs of the denomination, of the ups and downs of evangelism, the ups and downs of membership engagement. And it was written in the context of a leadership crisis where local church initiative was being stifled by over-centralized leadership control. But here's the thing. This is, to me, the most profound recipe for church growth based on her 6 decades of experience. I want to break this down. There's 6 things in here. Number 1, pray to God for wisdom. You cannot grow your church if you're not connected to the vine and pursuing wisdom. Now, wisdom, it's so interesting she used this word, because wisdom is about action. Wisdom is about knowing how to act, what to do. Wisdom is an active concept. Don't just pray to reach your city for Christ. Pray for wisdom on how to actually reach your city for Christ. Don't just say, Lord, bring people in. No, pray, God, show us the path that you want us to go on to reach people for Christ. So pray to God for wisdom. That's the first ingredient. The second one is to be guided by God. Submit your plans to God and he will direct your path, yeah? Being guided by God, you've prayed for wisdom, you've received his wisdom, now follow that wisdom. All right? That's the second ingredient. The third one, I'm going to be honest, I don't like this one. I'm an innovator, I like doing new stuff. She said to put new life into old methods. This is so hard. You know what? People say evangelistic meetings are dead. Maybe it's time to put new life into them. People say Sabbath school is dead. Maybe it's time to quit reading the leader's guide and put new life into Sabbath school. You know, Sabbath school was how this denomination grew for decades. You go and you do a branch Sabbath school, which then leads to a church plant. Sabbath school may be dead in some places, but maybe it's time to put new life into Sabbath school. In-gathering is dead. Literature evangelism dead. Pathfinders is dead. These were all incredibly effective in the past to grow Seventh-day Adventist churches. Maybe God is asking you to put new life into one of these old methods of labor. Now we get to the part that I love. Invent. Invent new plans and new methods. And before you're tempted to jump into, this time for new plans and new methods for reaching our community for Christ, we're going to find new ways of doing evangelism. We're going to do new, incredible ways of getting into our community and hold up. In a changing world, innovation is about effectiveness, not just change. And the fifth ingredient is that you're inventing new plans and new methods for awakening the interest of church members. This can be hard. The harvest is plentiful. The workers are few. We need new plans and new methods for awakening the interest of our church members and activating them for ministry. Then and only then, number 6, new plans and new methods for reaching the men and women of the world. Okay, let's turn back to that word invent. It's the fourth ingredient in this recipe. Inventing and innovation, they're similar words, similar concepts. Let's talk about innovation. Innovation in a church context is simply creative initiative under divine guidance. Remember, pray to God for wisdom and follow his guidance. Innovation is simply creative initiative under divine guidance. Another way to put it is that it's spiritually guided creativity for mission. Let me just pause and talk about the Propel conference. Which of these 6 ingredients is this? This is about activating members for ministry. There's a lot of amazing training opportunities, both in the denomination and outside. I was just at Exponential a few weeks ago. Incredible. We created the Propel conference for inspiration and innovation for church growth, and this is for pastors and lay leaders, church leaders, to come and be inspired and to learn innovation. We want the speakers to awaken the interest of you as church leaders. Innovation, because you're called to invent new plans and new methods yourself. Inspiration and innovation, that's the Propel conference. Now, most people think of innovation as doing something new, which in a sense is true, but the unspoken implication is that you're doing more, you're innovating on top of everything else that you're doing. That's the unspoken implication. But what I have found is that you cannot truly innovate without creating space for that innovation to occur. Innovation has to be cultivated. It has to be nurtured. It has to be tended to. You have to clear out space in your yard for the garden of innovation. You can't just scatter seeds on the lawn and expect innovation to in fact, innovation is not the practice of addition. Innovation is not the practice of addition. It's not more. It's not innovative new things that you're doing on time. Innovation, fundamentally, at its core, innovation is disciplined subtraction. If you hear nothing else today, you need to practice disciplined subtraction in order to innovate. Without disciplined subtraction, you cannot sustainably innovate. All right, I want to tell you a story. All right, this is not even going to be a humble brag. It's going to just come across as a brag, so I'm just going to say it. I'm sorry. I just finished my PhD, and it's a side note. If you're thinking about more schooling, don't do it unless your spouse is on board, your team is on board, your leadership is on board. But if you have a community around you and you're feeling that nudge to go learn more, maybe it's time to go get your MDiv. Maybe it's time to go get a Doctor of Ministry or a PhD. If you're feeling that pull, get your community around you, because you're not going to be able to finish it without the support of the people around you. But if you do that, go do it. Go do it. Don't wait. Don't wait. Dr. Cara Johnson, one of the leaders at the Oregon Conference, when I was thinking about doing this, she's like, don't stop. Don't wait. Just, I know you're busy. The sooner you start, the sooner you finish. Great words of wisdom. Okay, but so my dissertation topic was on digital evangelism. Specifically, I studied the idea of parasocial relationships. Stay with me. I can't help but go into some academic stuff. Okay, parasocial relationships, these are the illusion of a relationship that you have with somebody in the media. It's a one-sided connection that people have with social media influencers, with newscasters. Some of you older people will remember Walter Cronkite. Everybody felt like they were best friends with Walter Cronkite back in the day. That was a parasocial relationship. And what I did was I looked at how pastors can get online and develop, they can foster parasocial connection with people in their community and then harvest these for evangelistic purposes. And coming out of that, we actually created a program called Real Faith where we help pastors, we coach pastors, and we assist pastors in doing just that, creating short form video, getting them online so that way they can build and cultivate parasocial connection with people in the community, and then harvest those relationships for evangelism. So we've worked with dozens of pastors, 60 or 70 pastors at this point through the Real Faith program. And my team came to me once I was done with the PhD and I had all this extra time. They came to me and said, "Hey, Larry, maybe you should do this too, so that way you can actually speak from your experience doing this." And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." And so about a month after I graduated, and also when I graduated, I cut my hair. This is my grown-up hair, for those of you that hadn't noticed that I don't have long hair anymore. They're about a month after I graduated, I created Witzel on the Way. And Witzel on the Way is social media channels, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok, where I would post 60, 90-second video several times a week. And the idea was that I'm going to be cultivating parasocial connection with people in my community. I took some ideas from Dustin Hall, where I was focused tightly on content that was related to Vancouver, Washington, where I live. Really, I mean, I'm so proud of what we did with Witzel on the Way, but here's the problem. I did it on top of everything else that I was doing. And I'm like, let's do this. And I'm staying up late editing videos, and I'm like getting up early and writing scripts, and I'm going. And then after about 3 months, I ran out of gas. And it turned into a grind. The first 3 months were just like the inspiration was pulling me along. But I didn't do this, I didn't set myself up to do this sustainably. The innovation was there, except that it wasn't sustainable innovation. And after 5 months, I stopped. So if you go on any of these channels, you'll see old videos, but I'm not currently doing Witzel on the Way. I'm still gonna show you one of the videos though. All right, here's some audio.
A 7-day week makes no sense. A year? It's the Earth going around the sun. A month? The moon circling the Earth. A day? One spin of the planet. But a week? There's no astronomical reason for it. And yet, every culture, every corner of the world, 7 days. Why? Exodus 20:11 says, "In 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the 7th day." God created the rhythm. 6 days of work, 1 day of rest. Not just tradition, it's divine design. It's how our souls are wired. And for those of us walking in the way, that rhythm isn't just old, it's life-giving. Work hard, rest well, worship deeply. What would change in your life if you actually lived by that rhythm? Drop a comment and let me know. What's the hardest part about resting?
So let me just put a plug out there. Our Real Faith program is something that you can use. If you want to learn how to make these videos, if God is prompting you to move into a digital space through short form video, we have actually workshops here this week. There's limited availability, so if you want to do one of the Real Faith workshops with our coach, Kari Dixon, check out at the front desk and get signed up into one of the slots. The workshops are happening during the breakout times. But if this is, and I saw Ed Anderson here and Mo Zonke and a bunch of other guys that have been through this program. So there are witnesses of how powerful it can be. If you want to learn how to do this kind of video, we have workshops, and then we also have the Real Faith program that you can be working on from home when you get back. For me, I fell into the trap of thinking that innovation is about doing more. And that's a common mistake. Most leaders try to create change by adding more programs, more initiatives, more goals, more meetings, more urgency. But what happens when you do this? Inspiration can only carry you so far. You have a strong launch and then momentum fades. Or maybe you never even make it to launch. You have a great idea, but it just never goes anywhere. And even when you do launch, you can't sustain the pace. Here's what innovation research has found. To innovate, you have to create protected space. To innovate, you have to carve out margin. To innovate, you have to block out time on your calendar. In short, you have to create innovation capacity. And this capacity is not created by adding more. It's created by eliminating what no longer belongs in your calendar. Innovation capacity is built by what you eliminate. You cannot build a bigger future on an overloaded present. In order to innovate, you don't need more time. You certainly don't need more ideas. You don't even need more money. You need fewer priorities in order to innovate. You've got plenty of ideas. You've got plenty of people to execute these ideas. And money follows ministry. When innovation leads to more effective ministry, money will follow. The constraint is not ideas, it's not people, it's not money. Capacity is the real constraint. So if that's the case, how do you build innovation capacity? Not by adding more to your schedule, but by eliminating what is stealing that capacity. We think growth comes through addition, but breakthrough innovation in reality is disciplined subtraction. Innovation capacity is built by what you eliminate. So I want to introduce you to the innovation capacity framework. This has 5 pillars that I've honed over 3 decades of ministry and business career. I've used these principles in my own local church, in other churches that I've served, in companies that I've worked in. We use these principles at the Propel conference, at Sermon View, at Mission Click, other businesses that I've launched over the years. Adopting the innovation capacity framework brings a ton of benefits to you. You're going to clarify your priorities. You're going to develop more sustainable momentum. You're going to reduce organizational friction. You'll see greater innovation without overload. You're going to see stronger engagement from teams and members, and you're going to see mission acceleration. Your organization will develop resilience through leadership transitions, because the innovation capacity is built into the system and it's not based on a person, a single leader. And the result is what we're all looking for: improved effectiveness with lasting change. The innovation capacity framework turns inspiration into sustained execution. And this is going to allow you as a leader and your organization to move from short bursts of inspired activity to enduring momentum in the change that you want to see in your church. Innovation capacity is built by what you eliminate. Okay, so the innovation capacity framework is built on 5 pillars. Let's go through these 5 pillars. Each one of these eliminates a different constraint to innovation. The first one, pillar number 1, is strategic focus. You have to ruthlessly eliminate competing priorities. You cannot change everything, so you have to define what matters today, and then anything else, stop doing. If everything matters, nothing matters. And remember, innovation capacity is built by what you eliminate. Peter Drucker, one of my favorite quotes, he said, "Priorities are easy. Posteriorities, what not to do, that's the hard part." What are your posteriorities? Identify them and then communicate with your team that you're no longer going to expend resources on this. Without strategic focus, you cannot build innovation capacity. Here's the thing. One of my mentors pointed out, creativity is not unbounded freedom. In reality, we are drawn to constraint. Think about a sandbox. A sandbox. A kid sees a sandbox, and what do? They run to it and they start building stuff. They start doing stuff in that sandbox. But what is a sandbox? It's got 4 sides, it's filled with sand, and you go to the edge and it stops. A sandbox is constraints. There's only sand in there as long as you're getting as long as the cats in the neighborhood don't find it. It's only sand in there. It's got sides, It's filled with constraints, and yet it's one of the most creative spaces that a kid can play in a playground. So you need clear, purposeful boundaries. We're going to be creative in this space and not outside of that. So with your strategic focus, you need to eliminate competing priorities. However, strategic clarity without clear ownership blocks execution. So the second pillar is structural ownership. With structural ownership, you're going to eliminate ambiguity. You need to name the owner. Who is responsible for doing what? Who owns it? Clarify what their decision rights are. There's 5 levels of delegation from do this to you're responsible, let me know how it goes. And there's layers of delegation in between that. So clarify what their decision rights are. You can do anything within this box. Or, hey, come up with a plan, let me know, let's review it before you implement it. So what are the decision rights that the owner of this has? And you want to tie changes to roles and not personalities. Now this is a hard one because I know sometimes, especially in a church, you know that in your church, you have one of your most influential leaders has no role in the church. But there are some things that will not get done if that leader who has no role and never comes to church board, is not an elder, just might come to church family meetings or to church and business session, but you know that stuff doesn't get done if that person doesn't agree to it. In that case, you're stuck with a personality selling them. I'm not going to get into all of that, but it's better to have responsibilities tied to roles in your organization. So the key here is if no one owns it, then no one sustains it. When you have a change that you're trying to implement, if nobody owns it, no one sustains it. Most organizations don't fail from lack of effort. They fail because, oh, I thought you were doing that. Or we talked about it, but who was going to actually do that? Or it's everyone's job, which means it's no one's job. So what does structural ownership eliminate? It eliminates unclear responsibility. Capacity is not just lost through overload, it's also lost through confusion. When ownership is unclear, work slows down, decision stalls, and energy leaks. So you need to name the owner, clarify the decision rights, define what success looks like. And now you've eliminated ambiguity. However, ownership without structure is fragile. Innovation adoption without the right structure depends on memory and motivation rather than repeatable systems. So the third pillar is developing repeatable systems. And with repeatable systems, you are eliminating reinvention. You want to develop systems and then document them. Now, I want to talk in the church context. Most of your volunteers are habituated volunteers. Your deacon can roll out of bed on Sabbath morning and unlock the church and start the boiler and without even waking up, right? Because it's running on habit. And my goodness, there's some volunteers. If you move where you're, if you give away mugs to guests, if you move where the mugs are, your greeting team is going to go ballistic. Don't mess with our routine, right? So the habituated volunteer church runs on habituated volunteers. There's no way around that. And there's nothing a habituated volunteer dislikes more than an inspired volunteer messing with their systems. Okay? You need repeatable systems. Sometimes you need to make shifts in the system, and you need to do this deliberately and carefully and document the change, train the change. But here's the point with repeatable systems. You need to move from inspiration to process. You need to find a way to build cadence. Record what you learn as you learn it. What isn't repeatable isn't reliable. Without systems, every week is a fresh start. Every task requires thinking from scratch again. Every leader solves the same problem again and again and again. That's exhausting. We saw that in COVID. In April and May of 2020, pastors were exhausted because nobody was running on habituated energy. You had to be making everything up as you went along. So repeatable systems, most churches have repeatable systems. Just make sure that they're the right systems, that you're doing things the way that is going to maximize your mission effectiveness. Okay, so repeatable systems, what does this eliminate? You're eliminating the need to figure it out again. A lot of teams are not overworked because they have too much to do. They're overworked because they have to rethink everything every time. What isn't repeatable isn't sustainable. So you want to document the process, create a cadence, build a playbook, and now effort begins to compound instead of reset. Okay, but even with solid systems, change is going to stall if there's no room for innovation. So the fourth pillar in the innovation capacity framework is reserved capacity. This eliminates overload. You need to protect your time. You need to reduce initiative creep. You need to create margin intentionally. You cannot innovate when you're operating at full capacity. Let me say that again. You cannot innovate when you're operating at full capacity. Innovation capacity, remember, is created by what you eliminate. A lot of leaders try to add innovation into a full system. We're going to try this on top of everything else, but it doesn't work. So what do you eliminate? You eliminate non-essential commitments. You can't innovate at full capacity. If your calendar is full, your future is closed. So stop adding initiatives and reduce noise, protect your margin, because capacity is built by what you eliminate. All right, reserved capacity. That eliminates overload. But even with margin, change is going to collapse if it only depends on one person. And so the fifth pillar in the innovation capacity framework is distributed leadership. And with this pillar, you eliminate dependency. A lot of churches don't have a capacity problem, they have a bottleneck problem. And the bottleneck is usually you. I remember when I was a pastor at the Orchards Church, I was an assistant pastor and working with my senior pastor, Del Griebel. Love that man. I remember being at a board meeting and it was the stupidest. Somebody needed to buy a new lock to put on the dumpster. And Del was like, who's going to do this? And nobody raised their hand, and they're all like, well, you work here full time. And Del, bless his heart, was like, you know what? I'll take care of it. That's not distributed leadership. You need to raise up leaders, train them in what you're doing, and give them responsibility. You need to duplicate yourself, replicate yourself, so that way you can get out of the way. Distributed leadership means that the mission moves forward without you in the room. A lot of leaders measure their effectiveness by what they can accomplish, but great leaders are measured by what continues without them. That's the shift from doing to developing. Okay, so right now in your role, where are you the bottleneck? What are the decisions that only you can make, that someone else really should be able to make? What are the conversations that only you feel like you can have? What are the problems only you can solve? What's the work that only you can do? If you disappeared for 30 days, what would stop? And with this fifth pillar, your goal is to work yourself out of a job, train others to replace you. So to do that, three things in terms of distributed leadership. Number one, transfer ownership. Stop owning everything. Start assigning ownership clearly. Not, I'll take care of this, but you own this. You decide, I'll support you. Let me know how it goes. Or let me know how I can support you. Number two, develop decision makers. Don't just delegate tasks, develop judgment. Ask, what would you do in this situation? And then affirm, refine, and release. And number three, build leaders, not helpers. Helpers reduce your workload temporarily. Leaders multiply your capacity permanently. This is the fourth year that we've done the Propel conference. This is the first year that I've tried to distribute leadership. And, oh good, Danielle's not in here. She won't correct me. I think I've been about 70% there. There are some things that I'm still doing that really, we have 11 staff members here this week. I should be able to sit here and worship and say hello and everything happens. But that requires effort to build the systems, to develop the leadership so that you take care of this, you own this, you own this. It takes effort. So if something went wrong at the Propel conference, it's because I didn't delegate well. Okay, if something was going right, those guys have worked their tail off. And make sure if you see someone in a purple staff shirt, tell them thank you. Tell them thank you for me, just in case I don't see them. No, I'm kidding. Okay. All right, so the innovation capacity framework. Strategic focus tells you what matters. Structural ownership assigns responsibility. Repeatable systems make it sustainable. Reserved capacity creates space, and distributed leadership is what allows it to scale. If you want more capacity, stop asking what you need to do next and start asking, what do I need to stop doing? And who do I need to develop? Because capacity is built by what you eliminate. And here, with distributed leadership, you eliminate the need for everything to depend on you. You don't build capacity by adding more, you build it by removing what's slowing you down. So in this framework, every increase in capacity comes from some disciplined act of elimination. With strategic focus, you're eliminating competing priorities. With structural ownership, you're eliminating ambiguity. With repeatable systems, you're eliminating reinvention. With reserved capacity, you're eliminating the unimportant, the overload. You're eliminating the overload. And with distributed leadership, you're eliminating yourself. Okay, I want to talk for a moment about failure. Ellen White tells us to invent new plans and new methods. But invention is messy. Invention requires failure. Invention is inherently risky, and so we avoid it. We shoot down new ideas. We delay decisions. We default to what's familiar, not because we don't care, but because we're afraid of failure. But here's what I want you to hear today. There is power in failing. Not moral failure, not failure from sin or neglect. I'm talking about mission-driven failure, trying something bold, spirit-led, strategic, and having the courage to say, well, that didn't work, but here's what we learned, and then trying it again. That's not weakness, that's leadership. I think we need to change the culture around innovation and ministry. We need to be embracing continuous learning, which requires failure. I ran across this really interesting study. Organizations that tell the stories of their past failures are 70% more innovative than organizations that ignore those stories. I would love for a church at every board meeting to tell some story of how we failed in the past. And preferably, the more recent the story, the better. It should be a story that's happened in the last 3 months. You know, guys, we tried this and it failed miserably. Here's what we learned. You know, the Propel original last night that we played, talking about Annabelle Hansel and the Zoom Bible school. I don't know if you caught this, but they failed miserably on the first try. Like it was bad. The technical difficulties, it was bad. But they felt called to do this new thing, and so they kept at it, and they tried, and they found ways to solve this problem and that problem, and they kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And today, they have a really effective system. It would not have happened if they had stopped when they failed the first time. So we need to stop hiding failure. We don't spin it. We don't pretend like everything's working, because sometimes the fastest way to learn is to fail. Sometimes the fastest way to grow is to fail forward. Celebrate failure as the first draft of breakthrough. That's what healthy innovation looks like. One of my favorite quotes is this: notice the difference between what happens when someone says, I have failed 3 times, and what happens when they say, I am a failure. Failure is an event, not an identity. It's a data point, not the end. It's a rest stop on the journey, not the destination. The only way that you are truly failing is if you stop when you fail. If you make a mistake and you try something, and sometimes the only way to learn the innovation is to test the boundaries and discover, well, that didn't work, and here's what we learned. All right? So this is not, if you have ever felt, I am a failure, stop. Stop. Maybe you have made a bunch of mistakes in ministry. Maybe you've gotten a reputation as the guy who starts things and never finishes them. I'm just giving my testimony. Don't embrace that as your identity. Your identity is someone who learns every day. You know, if you get better, I don't know how you would define this or how you would measure it or whatever, but if you got 1% better every day, if you got 1% better every day, by the end of the year, you would be 37 times better than when you started the year. 1% per day. Learn every day. And the only way to learn sometimes is to fail, to discover what that boundary is. Well, that didn't work, and here's what we learned. All right, Thomas Edison, love this quote. I've not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. 10,000 ways. That's innovation. That's persistence. That's leadership. Innovation demands risk. Risk brings failure, but failure, when handled with honesty and humility, is not the end. It's the beginning of real learning and real growth. Don't be afraid to fail. That fear may be healthy. I'm not going to say don't be afraid to fail, because I fear failure. Let's say push past the fear. Be brave. Bravery is not being afraid. It's doing it even though you feel the fear. So embrace innovation even if you're risking failure. Okay, so that's the innovation capacity framework. When you apply this innovation capacity framework to your own ministry, you're going to clarify your priorities. You're going to develop more sustainable momentum. You're going to reduce organizational friction. You'll see greater innovation without overload. You're going to gain stronger engagement from teams and members. You'll develop resiliency through your leadership transitions. You're going to improve effectiveness with lasting change. Using this framework, you're going to accelerate your mission. Remember, you don't build capacity by adding more. You build it by removing what's slowing you down. Innovation capacity is built by what you eliminate. Innovation is about disciplined subtraction. I want to come back to Witzel on the Way, this social media channel. When we were looking at the strategic priorities for 2026 for our organization, we realized that parasocial relationship development, digital engagement, none of this made the cut. And in fact, not only did I not restart Witzel on the Way, we've had a podcast for a year and a half called Ministry Insights, and I really enjoyed doing that. We stopped doing that. I loved doing it. I loved running into people at events like this saying, oh, I liked this episode about such and such. I love that. And I hope that someday I'll be able to get back to doing podcasts again. Now, the Propel podcast, we're continuing. You'll hear more about that later. But we had to ruthlessly eliminate anything that was going to keep us from the 4 priorities that we articulated. And it meant stopping doing some things that we enjoyed doing that were a blessing, that had a positive impact, but we had to stop doing them in order to do the things that were more important. Oswald Chambers said that the good is the enemy of the best. You need to eliminate the good in order to pursue the best. Okay, most churches don't struggle with vision, they struggle with execution. So I want to throw this out here. you're going to be leaving the Propel conference with one or two big ideas. If you follow the method that we have here at the Propel conference, you're going to leave with one or two big ideas that could transform your ministry. But then you go back into the pressure of weekly ministry and very little actually changes. And so I've had people ask me for help with this. And so we're actually launching next month a program called the Propel Accelerator. It's a 12-month advisory experience where I'm going to work directly with a small number of leaders to help you build the capacity to create real, sustained change in your church. This advisory is based on the innovation capacity framework that we've been talking about today. We start with an assessment of where you are in the framework and what the vision is that God has placed on your heart. And then each month we meet for a 60-minute advisory session. We look at what happened that month, what you learned, and then we define the next 3 moves, the highest leverage actions that will actually move your church forward, that will propel your church forward. Alongside that, we're going to practice disciplined subtraction, identifying what you need to stop, delay, or remove entirely so that those moves can actually happen. Because progress doesn't come from doing more, it comes from focusing on what matters most. And over the 12 months, you're going to create real momentum, not just ideas, but measurable progress. And at the end of the year, you're going to see documented progress. So let me be clear, this is not a casual program. This requires serious commitment. And we're opening up 6 spots in the Propel Accelerator for this year. You're going to need to come prepared each month. You got to do the work. You got to make some hard decisions about what you're not going to do. And you need to make the monthly meeting a priority. There's also a significant financial investment in order to do this, because real change requires real commitment. We're also going to be asking the participants to come to the 2027 Propel Conference so that way they can share the change that actually happened over the 12 months in their church. We're keeping it intentionally small. We have room for 6 leaders this year from the Propel Conference. So if you're interested, there's the QR code on the screen. The goal of the Propel Accelerator is you're going to gain the capacity to consistently turn vision into real sustained progress. There's something about accountability, knowing that in 2 weeks you're going to be meeting with someone and that you're going to have to tell them how things went. I have 3 mentors that I do this with. I actually have my own Propel Accelerator. I work with a guy who has an MBA. He has a PhD in leadership, and I meet with him I was telling him about this a couple months ago, and he's like, the Propel Accelerator advisor needs his own advisor. So good news, I have room for 1 in the accelerator program. And so I've been meeting with him, and I have 3 people that I meet with on a regular basis, some once a month, one of them twice a month, one of them every week. And having that accountability is so powerful. Let me return to Ellen White's secret recipe. Men are needed who pray to God for wisdom and who, under the guidance of God, can put new life into old methods of labor and can invent new plans and new methods of awakening the interests of church members and reaching the men and women of the world. This week, you're going to hear from people who are putting new life into old methods. You're going to hear from people who are inventing new plans and new methods for awakening the interest of church members. You're going to hear from people that have invented new ways of reaching the men and women of the world, but when you hear them, don't just copy them. Don't just say, oh, this is how they did it, and I'm going to go back in my own ministry context and do it exactly the same way. Don't do that. Don't just copy them. Pray to God for wisdom. Follow God's guidance, because he wants you to put new life into the old methods of labor. He wants you to invent new methods of awakening the interest of your church members. He wants you to invent new methods of reaching the men and women of the world. And that's the power of reflection. I mentioned it last night. I'm going to mention it again as I close. Your workbook has a place for notes, and at the bottom of every notes page, big idea. Reflect. Let an idea percolate up to the top. Write it down. And at the end, if you go to every session, at the end of 14 sessions, you're going to have 14 big ideas. And then let one or two of those percolate up to the top and go home and implement those. But that only happens with reflection. On the back of your badge, there's some reflection questions. I wanted to make it as easy as possible for you to be able to have these conversations. At lunch today, when you're sitting with people, pull out your badge and ask the questions to each other. When you're meeting with your team between sessions, ask the questions of each other. That's the power of reflection. So pray to God for wisdom and let your mind dwell on these big ideas. And God will guide you in how to implement them in your own church.
Let's take a moment for some reflection. One of the biggest challenges in ministry today is learning to focus on what matters most and having the courage to let go of the things that distract us from our mission. One of my favorite quotes is from Oswald Chambers, where he said, "The good is the enemy of the best." And my hope is that this conversation encourages you to think intentionally about where your time and energy and leadership are being invested so you can create more space for meaningful impact and innovation in your church. So my question for you is simply this: what stood out for you in this message? It's really important to take a few minutes thinking about what you just heard in order to lock it in. What was your big takeaway? How can you apply it in your own ministry? So when the episode ends, please pause for 5 or 10 minutes and let your mind wander and reflect on what you just heard. It's a simple but powerful practice. Well, that's it for this episode. We'd love to hear from you. You can send an email to podcast@propelconference.org. And please mark your calendar for next year's Propel Conference coming to Gladstone, Oregon, April 25 to 28, 2027. Special thanks to Forecasting Hope for sponsoring this episode. This has been the Propel Podcast, inspiration and innovation to grow your church. The Propel Podcast is produced by the Sermon View crew, and the event recording services were provided by Adventist Learning Community. I'm Larry Witzel, wishing you God's richest blessing in your own evangelistic journey. Please join us again next time for another episode of the Propel Podcast.